The path to redemption rain beat against the windshield of the blue Peterbilt as Jack Morrison drove along Interstate 40, crossing Tennessee in the cold October morning. It had been 3 years since Sarah had left, taken by an aggressive cancer that gave her no chance to fight back. 3 years driving alone, hauling goods from coast to coast, sleeping in the truck cab, avoiding the empty house that awaited him in Memphis. Jack was 52 years old, his grey hair beginning to overshadow the once vibrant brown, deep wrinkles around his blue eyes that had seen too much of life. Sarah always said he had kind eyes, even when he tried to appear gruff. Now, those eyes rarely smiled. It was 4 in the morning when he spotted the gas station. One of those roadside establishments that seemed frozen in time, with its old pumps and flashing neon sign announcing "Open 24 hours." Jack needed coffee, maybe one of those bad sandwiches that sit in the warm display case for hours, anything to keep his eyes open until Nashville. He parked the truck in the loading area and climbed out of the cab, feeling his knees ache from the strain. 28 years on the road were taking their toll. As he walked toward the convenience store, he noticed a car parked near the pumps. A grey Chevrolet Malibu, a 1990s model, with peeling paint and a rear bumper practically detached. That's when he heard the voices. 2 male figures surrounded someone near the car. The yellowish light from the gas station revealed a young woman, no more than 20-something, visibly pregnant, perhaps in her 7th or 8th month. She held her belly with one hand, while the other was raised in a defensive gesture. Jack stopped where he was, watching. He wasn't the type to get into trouble. He'd learned the hard way that heroism on the road usually resulted in complications, but something about the scene deeply disturbed him. One of the men, thin and tall, wearing a worn leather jacket, was holding a supply pistol. The other, shorter and more corpulent, was laughing at something Jack couldn't hear from that distance. The girl was backing away, leaning against the car. That's when the man with the fuel gun pointed the nozzle at her and pulled the trigger. The liquid gushed out, soaking the young woman's clothes. Gasoline. Jack felt his stomach churn. She screamed, trying to protect herself, but the fuel continued to pour over her. The men laughed, a cruel, metallic laugh that echoed in the silent early morning. Something inside Jack broke at that moment. Perhaps it was the memory of Sarah, who would never tolerate him standing by in the face of such cruelty. Perhaps it was simply the basic humanity he thought he had lost in years of solitude. He didn't think. He just acted. His legs began to move, first in a brisk walk, then in a run. He was 6 feet tall and weighed 90 pounds, most of it muscle from decades of carrying boxes and changing tires. The men didn't see him coming until it was too late. Jack grabbed the man with the fuel gun by the collar of his jacket and pulled him back hard enough to make him drop the pump. The device fell to the ground, still spraying gasoline. The other man spun around, surprised, and tried to move forward, but Jack was already positioning himself between them and the girl. "Get out of here now," Jack said, his voice low and firm, carrying an authority that didn't need shouting to command respect. The shorter man hesitated, then pulled something from his pocket. A knife. The blade gleamed in the light of the police station. Jack didn't move, just kept his eyes fixed on them. "Listen here, old man," the man with the knife began, but Jack interrupted him. "You have 10 seconds to get in that car over there and get off this road. After that, I'll call the police, and you'll spend the next decade in prison for assault, attempted murder, and God knows what else." There was a bluff there. Jack wasn't sure if the police would arrive in time, but his voice betrayed no doubt. He also knew that types like that were fundamentally cowardly. They attacked those who couldn't defend themselves. The 2 men exchanged glances. The one with the gasoline-powered revolver spat on the ground. "That bitch isn't worth it anyway," he muttered, and started walking toward a Ford pickup parked in the shadows. The other followed him, sheathing his knife, but not before shooting a hateful look at Jack. The pickup's engine roared and the tires screeched as they sped out of the gas station, leaving black marks on the asphalt. Jack stood there until the taillights disappeared completely into the distance. Only then did he turn to the young woman. She was trembling violently, soaked in gasoline, her eyes wide with shock. Tears streamed down her face, mingling with the fuel that soaked her brown hair. She was wearing a light blue maternity shirt, now completely ruined, and jeans. Her feet were in worn-out sneakers. "Are you all right?" Jack asked, keeping his voice soft. He knew that approaching too quickly might frighten her even more. She nodded, but didn't seem able to speak. Her hands trembled as she tried to wipe her face, but this only spread the gasoline further. "Don't rub," Jack said quickly. "That'll irritate your skin. We need to get those clothes off you and clean you up. There's a hose back there at the gas station." He paused, realizing how that sounded. I have clean clothes in the truck. You can change in the bathroom, but first we need to wash off this gasoline." She finally spoke, her voice small and broken. "Thank you. I don't know what they would have done if you hadn't." "No need to explain now," Jack said. "Let's take care of you first." He walked to the convenience store, where a sleepy clerk sat behind the counter, seemingly oblivious to what had happened outside. Jack bought several towels, bottled water, and asked for the bathroom key. The clerk didn't even blink, just handed over the items and went back to looking at his phone. In the back of the gas station, Jack found the industrial hose they used to wash the fueling area. He turned it on and tested the temperature. Cold, but not freezing. It would have to do. The girl followed him slowly, one hand always on her stomach. Jack noticed how carefully she moved, as if each step hurt. "What's your name?" he asked while adjusting the water pressure. "Emma," she replied. "Emma Richardson." "Jack Morrison." "Nice to meet you, Emma, though I would have preferred it to be under different circumstances." He offered a small smile, trying to reassure her. "I'm going to turn my back. You need to wash this fuel off your face and arms as quickly as possible. Use plenty of water. I'll hold the hose pointed to the side and you tell me when you're done." Emma nodded and Jack turned, keeping the hose extended toward her. He listened to the sound of the water, occasional small sobs. His heart tightened. She was too young to be going through this. Too young and too alone, he suspected. "Ready?" she said after a few minutes. Jack turned off the water and grabbed the towels he had bought. He handed them to Emma without looking directly at her, respecting her privacy. "Dry yourself off. I'll get some clothes from the truck. The bathroom key is here. You can change in there." He walked to his Peterbilt and climbed into the cab. In the back, there was a small closet where he kept extra clothes. He took out a large flannel shirt, sweatpants with a drawstring and a jacket. They weren't perfect, but they were clean and dry. When he returned, Emma was wrapped in towels, still trembling. Jack handed her the clothes and the key. "Take it easy. No rush." She disappeared into the bathroom, and Jack took the opportunity to examine her Malibu. The tank was empty, explaining why she was at the gas station, but the car was in terrible condition. The tires were bald, the windshield had a long crack from one side to the other, and when he looked out the window, he saw the back seat full of bags and boxes. Everything she owned, he presumed. Emma emerged from the bathroom 15 minutes later. Jack's clothes were enormous on her, but she had rolled up the cuffs of his pants and tied the drawstring tightly. Her coat concealed her pregnant belly. She was barefoot, holding her gasoline-soaked sneakers. "I can't wear these," she said, looking at the shoes with disgust. Jack looked at his own feet, size 43 shoes. Lending his wouldn't do any good. "I have rubber flip-flops in the truck. They're not stylish, but they work." She nodded in agreement. She looked better now that she was clean and dry, though still visibly shaken. Jack noticed purplish marks on her arm, half hidden by her coat sleeve. Old marks, not from tonight. Are you hungry? He asked. Emma seemed surprised by the question, then nodded shyly. I haven't eaten since yesterday morning. Jack felt anger rising again, but he suppressed it. This wasn't the time for that. Come on, let's get some decent food. They went into the convenience store together. Jack grabbed pre-packaged sandwiches, fruit, juice, milk, chocolates, anything that looked nutritious. Emma watched him wide-eyed as he piled items on the counter. I can't afford all of that, she whispered. I didn't ask you to pay, Jack replied, handing his card to the cashier. They went to a small area of tables outside the gas station, lit by a single fluorescent lamp. Emma ate with evident hunger, but trying to maintain composure. Jack drank his coffee and watched the empty road. The sky was beginning to lighten on the horizon, a pale blue replacing the black of the night. Do you want to tell me what happened? Jack finally asked. Emma swallowed a piece of sandwich before answering. I was trying to get gas. I don't have much money, so I was only going to put in enough to get to the next town. Those two guys appeared out of nowhere. They started making comments about my condition, horrible things. I tried to ignore them, but they wouldn't stop. Then one of them grabbed the pump and said he was going to purify the prostitute. I never... Her voice broke. Jack reached across the table, stopping just inches from hers, an offer of comfort without forcing contact. You don't need to justify yourself to me or anyone else. What they did was criminal and cruel, period. Emma looked at his hand, then at his face. Why did you help me? You don't know me. It could have been dangerous for you. Jack pondered the question. It was a valid one. Because it was the right thing to do, and because someone I loved very much would never forgive me if I turned my back on someone in need of help. Your wife? Yes, she passed away 3 years ago. I'm sorry, Emma said, and there was genuine sincerity in her voice. They were silent for a moment, each lost in their own thoughts. Then Emma spoke again. I was going to Knoxville. My aunt lives there. She's the only family I have left. She said I can stay with her until the baby is born, maybe even after. But where were you before? Emma hesitated, her fingers nervously fidgeting with the sandwich wrapper. Louisville. I lived with the baby's father, but he wasn't a good person. The marks on my arm, did you see them? Jack nodded. There are more. All over my body. I endured it because I thought things would get better, that when the baby was born he would change. Stupid, I know. It's not stupid to have hope, Jack said gently. It's human. He started getting worse when he found out about the pregnancy. He said the baby wasn't his, that I was a whore. He drank more. He hit me more. Last week he pushed me down the stairs. I could have lost my daughter. She touched her belly protectively. That's when I decided I had to leave. I waited for him to leave for work, grabbed what I could and drove non-stop. Jack felt a pang in his chest. Emma's story was tragically common, but that didn't make it any less painful. You did the right thing by leaving. That took courage. I don't feel brave. I feel like an idiot who wasted 3 years of her life with a monster and is now alone, penniless, with nowhere to go, bringing a child into this messed up world. You have somewhere to go, Jack reminded her. Your aunt in Knoxville. If I can get there. My car is almost empty and I have about $15 in my pocket. And that was before spending money on gas getting here. Jack took a sip of coffee, pondering. He knew he should just buy some gas and go on his way. It was the sensible thing to do. He had his own cargo to deliver, his own problems. But Sarah was on his mind, that look she gave him when he was being stubborn and insensitive. How much fuel does your car hold? He asked. A full tank? About 50 liters? Jack did the math in his head. From where they were to Knoxville was about 250 kilometers. With that old car, She would need at least a full tank of gas and probably more money for food and emergencies. "All right," he said, making a decision. "I'll fill up your tank, and I'll give you $200 for the road. That should be enough to get you to Knoxville with some head start." Emma stared at him as if he had just spoken in a foreign language. "You... what?" "No, I can't accept this. You've already done too much." "You can and will accept. It's non-negotiable. But I can't pay it back. I don't know when I could." "I'm not asking you to pay me back," Jack said firmly. "Consider it a gift, or, if you prefer, consider it a favor." "A favor?" Emma seemed confused. Jack smiled sadly. "For the past 3 years, I've been driving from coast to coast like a ghost. Work, sleep, work again. I have no purpose other than to pay bills and kill time until whatever comes next. Helping you gives me something I haven't had in a long time. It makes me feel human again." Emma's eyes filled with tears. "I don't know what to say." "You don't need to say anything. Just accept the help." They returned to the gas station area. Jack filled up the Malibu's tank while Emma waited nervously beside him. He checked the oil, which was low, so he bought a gallon and topped it off. He checked the windshield washer fluid and tire pressure, everything he could do to ensure the car would reach its destination. When he finished, he took out his wallet and counted out $250 in bills. He pressed the money into Emma's hand, closing her fingers around the bills when she tried to protest. "You'll need it," he said. "Promise you'll use it if necessary." Emma nodded, tears now streaming freely. "Thank you. Thank you for everything. You saved my life tonight, mine and my daughter's." "What are you going to call her?" Jack asked. "Sarah," Emma replied. "I've always liked that name." Jack felt as if he'd been punched in the stomach. Of all the coincidences in the universe, he blinked rapidly, brushing away the moisture that threatened to form in his eyes. "It's a beautiful name," he managed to say. "Your daughter will be lucky to have you as a mother. Any woman who fights like you fought tonight, who has the courage to start over, will be an amazing mother." Emma hugged Jack then, quickly but tightly. He was surprised for a moment, then returned the hug gently, careful with her belly. "If you ever pass through Knoxville and need a place to rest, look me up," Emma said as they parted ways. "I'll leave my phone number with you, even if it's just for coffee. I'd love for you to meet Sarah when she's born. It would be very special to me." Jack took the piece of paper where she had scribbled her number and carefully tucked it into his wallet. He knew he would probably never call, that this was one of those once-in-a-lifetime encounters, but it was comforting to have the option. He watched her get into the Malibu, adjust the seat to accommodate her belly, check the mirrors. She gave him one last wave through the window, then started the engine. The car coughed and sputtered before starting, but finally it worked. Emma pulled away from the gas station slowly, the taillights fading down the road until they disappeared. Jack stood there for a long time after she left, watching the sky continue to brighten. The sun was rising, painting the horizon in oranges and pinks. It was beautiful, he realized. It had been a long time since he had stopped to really watch a sunrise. He thought of Sarah, his Sarah, and how she would have loved to know that he had helped someone in need. She always believed in the best of people, even when Jack was cynical. "You have a good heart, Jack Morrison," she used to say. "You just need to remember to use it sometimes." Perhaps he remembered tonight. Jack returned to his truck, climbed into the cab, and started the engine. He had a delivery to make in Nashville. He still had time to arrive on schedule, but as he drove, he found himself thinking about Emma, hoping she would arrive safely in Knoxville, that her aunt would welcome her, and that little Sarah would be born healthy. 3 months later, Jack was making a delivery in Knoxville. He'd been carrying his wallet for a while, the paper with Emma's number neatly folded among other things. He'd looked at that paper many times, but never paid any attention. What would he say? How would he explain that that night had meant more to him than she probably imagined? But this time, with the city of Knoxville surrounding him, he felt a different kind of urgency. He picked up his phone and dialed the number. It rang 3 times before someone answered. "Hello?" It was Emma's voice. He recognized it immediately. "Emma, it's Jack. Jack Morrison from the gas station in Tennessee." There was a pause, then a shout of joy. "Jack! Oh my God, Jack, I couldn't believe you called. Where are you?" "In Knoxville, actually, making a delivery. I thought, well, if the offer still stands, I'd love to have that coffee." Yes, absolutely. You need to meet Sarah. She was born 6 weeks ago. She's perfect, Jack. She's perfect." But they arranged to meet at a small cafe downtown in 2 hours. Jack finished his delivery faster than usual, feeling anxious in a way he hadn't felt in years. The cafe was cozy, with exposed brick walls and the rich smell of freshly ground beans in the air. Emma was already there when he arrived, sitting at a corner table. She looked different, healthier, happier. Her hair was cut in a new style, and she wore clean, well-fitting clothes. Next to her, in a baby carrier, was the smallest child Jack had ever seen. "Jack!" Emma stood up and hugged him again, this time with even more enthusiasm. "I'm so glad you called." They sat down, and Jack couldn't take his eyes off the baby. Sarah had a tuft of dark hair, round cheeks, and tiny clenched fists. She was asleep, oblivious to the world around her. "She's beautiful," Jack said, his voice a little hoarse. "Do you want to hold her?" Emma asked. Jack hesitated. He and Sarah had never had children. She couldn't. Something about medical complications they discovered early in their marriage. It was one of the great sorrows of her life, though she never complained. And now here was Jack, being offered the chance to hold a child named Sarah. "I would love to," he finally said. Emma gently picked up the baby and placed her in Jack's arms. She was so light, so fragile. Sarah stirred slightly, then yawned and fell back asleep. Jack felt something inside him break, a wall he had built up over 3 years of loneliness and pain. "Hi, little Sarah," he whispered. "It's a pleasure to meet you." Emma watched with a smile. "She would have died that night if you hadn't shown up, you know. Those men, I saw it in their eyes. They were going to do something terrible. You saved her before she was even born." "You saved yourself," Jack corrected. "By leaving that abusive relationship, by seeking help from your aunt, by fighting for your daughter. That was all you." "Maybe. But you were the catalyst. You showed me that there are still good people in the world, that it's worth trusting them sometimes." Emma took a sip of her coffee. "My aunt has been amazing. She helped me get a part-time job at a bookstore. It's not much, but it pays the bills. And she loves looking after Sarah when I'm working. We're okay. For the first time in a long time, we're really okay." "And Dad?" Jack asked, though he wasn't sure he wanted to know the answer. "He tried to find me. He called a few times, left threatening messages. But I got a restraining order. He can't come near me or Sarah, and I changed my number. He has no power over me now." Jack nodded, relieved. He continued holding the baby, rocking her gently. Sarah opened her eyes briefly, 2 blue orbs that looked at him with childlike curiosity before closing again. They talked for hours in that cafe. Emma spoke about her plans for the future, perhaps returning to college at night, giving Sarah the life she deserved. Jack talked about his wife, more than he had spoken to anyone since she died. Emma was a patient listener, asking the right questions, offering comfort without empty platitudes. "You're too lonely," Emma said at one point. "It's not healthy to drive around all the time without any real connection to people. It's easier this way," Jack admitted. "It doesn't hurt when you don't care." "But you don't live when you don't care," Emma retorted. "Sarah, my Sarah, she would want you to be happy. She would want you to find purpose again. Jack knew she was right. His Sarah would have said the same thing, probably with more eloquence and certainly with that look that wouldn't accept any arguments. When it was finally time to leave, Jack reluctantly handed the baby back to Emma. He had bought a gift before arriving, something he saw in a shop and couldn't resist. It was a musical mobile with tiny silver stars that played a soft lullaby. "For her crib," he explained, handing it to Emma, "so she knows she's safe and loved." Emma hugged the mobile to her chest, her eyes shining. "Thank you, Jack, for everything. You changed our lives." "You changed mine," Jack replied, and it was true. They exchanged contact information properly this time, not just a number scribbled on a piece of paper. Emma made Jack promise that he would visit whenever he was in the area, that he would call at least once a month. He promised, and this time he intended to keep his promise. As he drove out of Knoxville that night, Jack felt something he hadn't felt in years. Hope, connection, a purpose beyond simply existing. He had helped save 2 lives that night at the gas station, but perhaps they had saved his too. He turned on the radio and for the first time in years sang along to the music. His voice was rusty, out of tune, but it was joyful, alive. Jack thought of his Sarah, the woman he had loved for 25 years, and felt that she would be smiling wherever she was. She had always known he had that in him, that capacity to care, to make a difference. He just needed to be reminded. The road stretched ahead, illuminated by the Peterbilt's headlights. Jack Morrison, 52 years old, a widower, a truck driver for 28 years, drove through the night. But this time, he wasn't running from pain. He was driving towards something new, a second chance, a fresh start. And in the seat next to him, illuminated by the dashboard light, was a photo Emma had taken before he left. He was holding little Sarah, both captured in a moment of pure peace. He had forgotten what it was like to be needed, to be important to someone. "I would never forget it,"